good evening, everyone. As always, thank you for having me, and I'm excited to share some updates from the world of technology in the district. This is timely, as I'm essentially on my 1-year anniversary after joining the district. So we've gotten a lot done, and we have a lot of exciting things happening. So I'm looking forward to sharing those with you tonight. So I'm just going to jump right in. The areas I'd like to cover this evening fall into these 4 buckets, starting with a focus on infrastructure and our network and some of the critical work we've been doing to make sure that we are not only secure and up and running, but also future ready and prepared for the increasing demands we see on computer networks. And we'll start with the extremely exciting topic of E-rate funding. So, as I mentioned last year when I was here, all public schools, libraries, and other institutions have access to E-rate funding. This is a program through the FCC, and it essentially provides a bucket of funds to school districts to be used over the course of a 5-year window for a variety of purposes related to telecommunications. It's evolved over the years. Early on, it was related to older internet architecture. And of course, as the technology has changed, so has the program. We are able to use these funding resources for everything from network switching equipment and battery backups and access points and cabling and all of these different critical infrastructure pieces to keep our network up and running, as well as things like our internet service that we pay for each year. Note, though, that it is not usable for other technologies. So we can't use these funds for user devices, iPads, Macs, things like that. This is purely for network infrastructure. This year represents the first year in our new cycle of E-rate funding. So we are beginning a cycle starting in 2026, which will last 5 years. And the district has been allocated a pre-discount budget of just over $320,000 for this. What that actually amounts to, though, is a rebate or reimbursement of 40% of that. So over the next 5 years, the districts will invest $320,000 and be reimbursed 40% of that, or just under $130,000. We already have a fairly clear roadmap and plan for the updates that we're going to use this funding for, and I'm going to share some of that as we go forward here. All right, so I hope you enjoy my visual of our district IDF and MDF switches. So last year I talked a lot about switches, because when I came on, one of the first things I did was take a look at our critical infrastructure. And we did come to find that we had some areas that really were due for some updates. We had quite a few network resources, including switches, which were significantly out of support. We're no longer receiving security updates, and were a real risk for failure. Again, I keep using the term critical infrastructure, and that's because if these switches go down, we're losing potential chunks or the entire network in the district. And obviously, our security systems, our camera systems, everything is tied back to that. So it is really critical that we keep this technology up to date. So across the 3 buildings, we have 69 of these IDF switches. So these are kind of communication switches that essentially connect all of our different devices, our wireless access points, the little drops that we have in the wall to plug computers into, phones, etc. They all wire back to our closets and connect to one of these 69 switches across the district. We also have 6 MDF switches. These are the larger, they're essentially the brains of our network closets, and they are especially critical. Now, when I presented to you last year, out of those 69, 38 of them were up to date and under support, getting updates. That essentially meant that half of our switches were out of support, which clearly is a challenge and a risk. Of our MDFs, only 2 were up to date, with 4 being out of date. So this quickly became a priority for me to make sure that we had a robust and secure network. So using the remnants of our last E-rate bucket, we were able to do some of these updates actually over the summer. So you can see all the ones in green have been replaced and updated and are fully supported and should have a good 7 to 10 year life ahead of them. We started MDF switches to ensure that that critical piece was taken care of. And you can see, though, we still have a small collection of switches that are remaining and need to be replaced. That will be 20 more. The good news about those 20 is that they are manufactured by Cisco. And Cisco just recently announced that they extended the support, the security updates on those for an additional year. So we were planning on moving forward with that, but now that we have an additional year of support and warranty, we're going to use that and have pushed these updates off until next year. All of this will be funded, of course, in part by this E-rate bucket. So we're making progress, and we're going to have to continue to develop a long-term plan to ensure all of this critical infrastructure remains up to date. In a similar kind of vein or topic here, I wanted to update you on our connectivity and data, which is obviously critical. As we are expanding and increasing the number of devices across the district, as we are using devices like the big influx of Apple devices are notorious for eating up a lot of bandwidth on your network, and they're very demanding devices. So in anticipation for that, we worked with Lyric to do some pretty significant network updates. So this was a little schematic of what our network was prior to last July. We essentially had one single connection between the district and the Lyric, which is down in Mamaroneck at 450 in Mamaroneck. And that line was capable of carrying 1 gigabyte of data, which is fairly low in this day and age. So just to make that clear, that was our internet connection for the whole district was coming through that line, as well as our ability to communicate with different software platforms that are hosted down at the Lyric. So for example, the software we use in the business office is communicating down to those offices, and it's fully reliant on this 1 gigabyte connection. So in collaboration with the Lyric, we did a pretty major update last year, and you can see this is our new structure, where we have not only that continued line to Mamaroneck, but we now have a redundant line that goes to Rockland, to a backup data center. And in addition to adding that redundancy, the lines have been upgraded to be able to carry 10 gigabytes data, so it's a 10 times increase in their capability. At the same time, we also doubled our internet connection so that all of these new devices would have a robust connection that could be handled and we wouldn't see any outages. And so that has been in place since the late spring into July, and it's been performing very well. We haven't had any issues. And it's great because it sets the stage for the next round of upgrades and changes we want to make, which I'll talk about more in a moment. So this is our tentative roadmap related to network infrastructure, and as well I threw some hardware items in there. But just to run through some of the things coming up in our anticipated timeline. First, we are working, and this is not directly network related, but kind of a side topic, but we're working on replacing a lot of our end-of-life classroom interactive displays. We have quite a few across the district that are at the end of their life, and we're starting to see them fail. And of course, those are critical. Teachers rely on those for instruction every day. So we're trying to develop a clear plan for that, as well as removing a lot of obsolete workstations. We have a lot of computers that are on Windows 10, and Windows 10 is no longer supported. And so we're working on removing those to make sure that we have a secure network. So that's ongoing work. In addition, we have started the process of trying to migrate or transfer a lot of our systems from things that are running on hardware that lives here on campus. In our closets, we have servers, and a lot of those servers are starting to age out. And so the typical thing you would be doing nowadays is moving them from our local hardware to a cloud environment. It offers a lot of benefits. It's significantly more secure, easier to access. The district is no longer responsible for updating servers every few years, which can get very pricey. So we're in the early stages of a migration of a lot of our systems. We're transferring all of our old file servers over right now, and then we'll eventually be moving to essentially all systems to eventually get them all clouded. Next, we are looking at our transition for our camera system. So we've been doing a lot of digging around and attempted improvements to our existing security infrastructure, which includes camera systems. We know the PA will be presented as part of the potential capital project. But for our cameras, again, we have some aging technology. The cameras store their video footage on local servers, which again are starting to age out and are quite expensive. So we have a plan in place to potentially transition to a clouded camera infrastructure where we will have a lot more functionality to actually utilize our cameras. They'll be accessible through the internet rather than through complex software and systems locally. It'll be redundant with lots of backup. We'll be able to retain footage for longer. There are a lot of benefits to it. So we are tentatively planned to do that work with a proposed interfund transfer in the coming summer. We would then, just to be clear, that is a software upgrade. We're not replacing all of the physical cameras. That will be done piecemeal over the next 4 to 5 years. Going forward, like I mentioned before, we have these switches to replace, these 20 remaining end-of-life switches, and we are going to need to add some additional switching equipment to support the potential new PA system, as well as a phone system that we're going to have to be working on as well, so lots of upgrades coming. That one we are budgeting for, and we can also use E-rate for that. So that is planned for 2 years from now. So that's in 27. It's not really 2 years, it's more like 15 months. Then we get to our VoIP hardware. So you're seeing a similar story here. We have a lot of aging equipment. Our voice system, a lot of our servers are aging out, and so we're looking at implementing a clouded system, WebEx, to replace that, and that is planned for late next year as well. Unfortunately, we can't use E-rate for that, so we're building it into the operating budget. Finally, the last piece is the battery backup piece. We have some critical age issues with some of our battery backups. So these are batteries that live in all of our network closets, and so if we have a power outage, it shifts over to batteries so that our internet can remain active for a couple of hours. These are batteries that wear out over time and need to be replaced, and so we've been working with some vendors to assess what we have, and we have a plan in place to begin that process as well. That can be funded with E-rate funding, so we're going to utilize that there. And so that is our update for the network and infrastructure side of things. You can see there's a lot going on. We have a lot planned for the future, and we're going to ensure we have a really robust network that can support the teaching and learning that happens every day. Next section, equally exciting, data privacy and security. So of course, we're required to provide an update to the board every year on our efforts around keeping our data secure and safe and protecting our network and all of our users. And so we've been doing a lot of work on that as well. You may not be aware, but most school districts are facing a very rapid increase in attempted hacking and other malware attacks and things like that. School districts are seen as kind of easy targets with some high value data, and so you can see some shocking numbers here where school districts are seeing literally thousands of phishing attacks and other types of cyber attacks on a weekly basis. And we are no different, and so we are experiencing a lot of these phishing attempts and other challenges across our network. And so we have some plans in place to add some additional layers of security going forward. First and foremost, we just recently partnered with Lyric and a company called Checkpoint, which is a best-in-class email security platform, to enable a layer of security protection on top of our Microsoft accounts that serves as an additional kind of gateway into our email. And it catches a very high percentage, over 90% of phishing attacks, spam and scam messages, and other malware that can come in through email. Email is really the most challenging thing to manage. And so we've added this layer on top, which, just to be clear, is an additional layer on top of the built-in Microsoft tools we're already using. It's called Microsoft Defender, which is in place as well. So we're hoping that that creates a much more secure email system for us. At the same time, we are working to implement later this spring into the summer CrowdStrike. which is, again, best-in-class industry standard EDR, endpoint detection and remediation tool, which is essentially what you can think of as like an antivirus or malware platform that lives on your computers and acts as another layer of protection. So if a user downloads some malicious software from the internet, this will catch it before it's able to infiltrate and damage our network. That too is a secondary layer on top of our existing Microsoft protections. So those two will be in place by the end of this school year. There are some other pieces to this as well. Of course, we have to make sure we have our agreements with all of our vendors to ensure that they're keeping all of our data safe. So every piece of software we use, we have a data privacy agreement for. We are in the process, thankfully, of transitioning from what is a very time-consuming and complex system where we're essentially working with every single vendor one-on-one and their legal departments to get these documents signed, which is challenging. Fortunately, New York State is part of this Student Data Privacy Consortium, which is a work in progress, where they're doing a clearinghouse, essentially, where software vendors can provide a universal data privacy agreement, and if New York State agrees to it, they can include it, and then we can just piggyback onto that agreement rather than having to go out one by one. It's a process though, it's a new tool and it's just developing, so right now we're living in both worlds, but the good news is every single tool we use, we have a signed agreement for currently. So we are protected from a legal perspective in terms of data breaches. The final piece really involves our faculty and staff. As you know, things like phishing are very challenging. We can use technology to protect us, but phishing emails get through, and a big piece of being a secure network and a secure system is training. So we are going to be working towards additional security awareness training for our staff, using things like phishing tests, where we can send out test phishing campaigns and see how people perform and do targeted trainings for people who struggle with it. And then the other piece of this is we are working towards enabling MFA, or multi-factor authentication, for the entire staff. We currently have it on for a small number of staff members, but we want to expand that across the board because that truly is the best way to remain secure. And so we're having some conversations around the best way to roll that out and what our options are. And so we're hoping to get that in place as well by the end of the springtime. And so those are our data privacy and security updates. Very quickly, I will talk a little bit about our communications.
So before you move on, because I don't really hit you with like 50 questions.
Go ahead.
I've got a couple on the network and then a couple on the security.
Sure.
So maybe you could just let us know what LYRIC stands for the people that are listening.
Sure, I apologize. LYRIC is Lower Hudson Regional Information Center. It's part of Southwest BOCES, and they are a collaborative resource that we use to manage our IT. So we work with them, we purchase a lot of our software and tools through them. We manage our network in collaboration with them. I apologize for not being clear on that, but yes, they're a local partner, state-funded partner.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that everybody listening
Absolutely
understood who they
I say it all the time, I take for granted.
Yeah,
Yes.
we fall into it because you use it.
Exactly.
So, like, we know what you're talking about. What do you do for the backup for the, it sounds like we're moving to a cloud system for a lot of things.
Mhm.
So LYRIC gets hit. They get hit massively and get taken out completely. How do we continue operations absent that? Do we save things on our own? If we're getting rid of our servers, then we don't have that. Or are there redundancies? So instead of the LYRIC, it's coming from Chapel.
Sure. So one of the big shifts was the addition of the redundant line to the Rockland campus of the Lower Hudson Regional Information Center. And so if we suffer, and if 450 in Mamaroneck, if that data center suffers an attack or goes down for any reason, our network, our connection automatically kicks over to the redundant connection. So all of our data that lives on the data centers in Mamaroneck is backed up daily in the Rockland Center, as well as all of our software. So we may see, if that happens, we would likely see a blip for a couple of minutes, but then it should come back online fairly quickly. As for our local content, Almost all of it has already been transferred from local file servers to Microsoft OneDrive. And Microsoft, being obviously Microsoft, an enterprise organization, has many layers of redundancy. So we have a lot of opportunities to recover lost data. They have backups. If their servers go down, they have backup servers and backup servers and backup servers. So there's actually a lot more security in having clouded resources than having local resources. Here, if we, God forbid, had a flood or a fire or even just an electrical issue, we would be down without redundancy. So it's much safer to get out into these enterprise-grade server farms and backups and so forth.
And what about things like, are all of our phones VoIP?
They are currently. So we currently have a hybrid VoIP system, which is it's internet voice, right, which is what VoIP is. However, there is a backup that is a physical line, a more old-fashioned, and that is still, it's become essentially an old-fashioned technology where everything is moving to a fully clouded VoIP system. It will integrate fully with our PA and lockdown technology. Everything will work seamlessly together. And just like I was mentioning with our other data, there are multiple levels of redundancy to ensure that we have functional communications, even if the main WebEx servers go down, for example. Whereas here, if one of our phone gateways, which is our server for that, goes down, then we don't have those layers of backup. So it creates a much more resilient network.
The last question, or turn it to anyone else. Will the students be getting multi-factor tokens as well, or they're not as vulnerable because it's school-run devices that are?
So it's a good question. In a perfect world, every user would have it. I'm not aware of any school districts who have enabled it for students yet. It's challenging, as you can imagine. We do have some controls in place over student email. For example, K through 8 students are not able to email in or out of the district, so it's contained. And so the chances of them getting hit with phishing emails are next to none, right? Essentially none. High school, we do open up the emails because there are needs when we're going through the college process and various other things. So there is a little bit of risk there. We're trying to look at this in a tiered approach and tighten things up as best we can, get all of our staff on it. And then I certainly think it's a question we're gonna have to revisit in the future and explore what kind of options exist. It's challenging to trust large numbers of students with that level of additional, tech that they have to manage. So we have to be thoughtful about it. But yes, it's on our radar once we get everything else in place.
Any other issues?
One for me.
Sure.
So you talked a little bit about the data privacy agreements process with all the vendors. I'm just curious also in your, since you've been here in your first year, if there's a sort of a process that you're going through where you're actually vetting the vendors in terms of their cybersecurity practices, because obviously there's a lot of variation in how they adhere to best practices.
I read a lot of those terms and conditions that, that most people don't. So there are a couple things here. We are able to procure, I would say 30 or 40% of our software through the Lyric, through BOCES. And when we get software through them, it is covered by their data privacy agreements, which is a benefit of getting software through them. We don't have to worry about that. It's all covered by their blanket agreements, and they do all the vetting with their legal team ahead of time. For the resources we purchase direct from vendors, we do have to go through a process of vetting their policies, and then ultimately we reach out to them and submit to them our standard data privacy agreement, which is essentially the standard one used across the state. They will review it with their legal teams, and if they're comfortable with it, they will sign it off. We often have our legal counsel in the district review these, especially if there are any tweaks or changes requested. But yes, we do review them, and we have a pretty high standard, which we're required to by state and federal law. Ed Law 2D is very strict about student privacy. And so our agreements have to rise to that level, and they do. And if they don't, then we do not adopt that software. Good. Good. Sure, no problem. All right. 2 more sections here really quick. Just wanted to mention communications, because when I was here last year, that was a big part of our conversation. We were in the very early stages of adopting Parent Square, and so just by way of update, we have now been using Parent Square as a full unified communications platform since essentially August. I would say that in looking back and kind of observing the process and seeing the usage, it's been quite, the usage has been quite extensive, and it has had a pretty significant impact. We've been very happy with it. Our staff is certainly still learning and trying to understand all that it can do for them and start to shift old habits away from reliance on email and things like that and use this platform and understand the benefits. But we're making great progress. I'll show you really quick. These are just a whole bunch of little stats that I pulled from our Parent Square tenant there. And you can see some interesting things. I mean, we've had over 16,000 direct messages sent in the platform. Well over 1,000 posts have been sent. And you can see the breakdown for the different types of posts we're using. People are really using the platform across the board. Our parent engagement and community engagement has been fantastic. Just about, I think with the exception of, I think we're just about at 100% contactability, which means we have accurate, up-to-date contact information for everyone, which is pretty unheard of. Most districts are constantly trying to fight that battle to get to 100% contactability, which is great. More than half of our community are using the app, which is great because it has a lot of added benefits. They're getting notifications. 90% of them are getting their notifications. Nearly 70% of our families have not only consumed posts and information, but actually engaged with them, whether it's appreciating things or writing back or filling out a form or whatever it may be. So we've had really great engagement, and we're excited to see how that moves forward as we learn even more about it and get more comfortable with the platform and really use it to what it can do. I will say really quick, because I don't, the green bar chart in the middle there, I just want to clarify why BRS is winning by post so much. That is very expected. Obviously in an elementary classroom, there's a lot of opportunity for teachers to send quick photos home to parents, and they're using it really well. We see less teacher-parent usage at the other buildings, and that's for no reason other than they're continuing to learn and shift. I will also say our middle school has been rolling out their Apple deployment this year, which is very new as well. So we're trying to manage the number of new things we really push through to them. But like I said, we're very happy with the usage. So much so that we're now in the process of taking the next step with Parent Square, which is doing an update to our website, shifting it to the Parent Square companion platform. They have their own website platform, which is great. Very modern, compliant, very easy to manage, and it's fully integrated with Parent Square. So when we send a post for a district update, for example, we can click a button and that shows up right on the website as well. If we send an alert for a snow delay, click a button and sends right on the website. So it really streamlines the process. A lot of districts around here are using that platform as well, including Pecanico Hills, and everyone raves about it. It's a really, really great company, and so we're excited to make that shift as well. We're starting the work now, and we're looking to launch late in the spring. Obviously, there will be a lot more details coming about that when we get further along. All right. And then the final piece to touch on is the most important and certainly the most interesting, which is teaching and learning. And so, of course, we had kind of an exciting fall here. So as you know, we transitioned the middle school from their Windows laptops that students were using in the past to a full Apple deployment. We began this process last spring with a lot of professional learning for staff, and then we hit the ground running in September. And it's been largely successful thus far. We have had very few technical issues to navigate. Breakage is way down. We're starting to see a lot of really innovative use. But of course it is a process, and our staff and our students are continuing to engage in kind of ongoing learning here to better understand what these devices can do that they were not able to do with our previous deployments. So we're starting to experiment with things like video editing and podcasting and AR and VR and all sorts of different tools. We are continuing to work on this. We offer weekly workshops at both the elementary and middle school focused on the Apple technology. We have coaching available for teachers. We spent the whole day with the middle school faculty for our recent conference day back in November. And coming up in a couple of weeks, we have an Apple professional learning specialist who I've worked with for years, who's wonderful, who's going to come on site and work with BRS in the middle school to kind of further develop new and innovative curriculum using this technology. So we're very excited about that. At the same time, we have been going through a process at the high school to make some determinations about where we go at the high school next year. As you know, we currently have our Windows devices for students and staff at the high school. And while they are certainly functional, they are also limited in what we can do with them from an instructional perspective. Not to mention all of the security and privacy and other management benefits that we get from the Apple deployment. So we have had a group of, I would say, about a dozen high school teachers who have been piloting Apple Tech, iPads and MacBooks since essentially the start of the year. We've been meeting regularly and having learning sessions and getting feedback and having conversations about what the right model is going forward. We were actually supposed to do a visit to another district today, but the weather had a different plan for us, so we'll be rescheduling it. But we're hoping to bring teachers, just like we did with the middle school, into other districts to see this technology in action so they can really get a sense of what kind of impact it can make. So that process is continuing. We're hoping to come to a final decision within a month or so, and then follow a similar process that we did at the middle school, where we can get new devices in the hands of our staff this spring, have a prolonged, mapped out period of professional learning, and then roll out with students in the fall. But again, no decisions have been made yet. We're still going through the process. I did just want to mention here publicly that we are going to discontinue the BYOD option, the bring your own device option for the high school next year. And there are a lot of reasons for that, including the distraction-free schools legislation. You know, when students bring in personal devices, we have zero control over them. And so it's essentially the Wild West. We have our internet filter, but that's it. And it poses a lot of security, privacy challenges, management challenges, and not the least, instructional challenges. Very difficult for teachers to instruct a class where you have all different devices and no management or ability to control them or monitor them. And so we're going to move away from that option in the future to make sure we have a secure and focused instructional technology environment going forward. Finally, just a couple of little announcements and things to share. You may have seen in late October we celebrated Digital Citizenship Week. We had a lot of exciting activities, including lessons for students on digital wellness and citizenship throughout the district. We held a screening of Can't Look Away at Jacob Burns. It was a sold-out screening where the director and the producer came and did a Q&A. It was very well received. It's a very powerful documentary about the challenges of social media with teenagers. Later that week, we had a visit from Devorah Heitner, who is a renowned author and focuses on raising kids in the digital age. And she gave a great talk to our 5th graders, including our friends from Pecanico Hills came and visited, our 9th graders, our staff, and then a talk for parents in the evening. And it was a very successful day. So we're excited about that, and we're looking forward to making that an event each year going forward. In the same vein, in the next week actually is Computer Science Week, and so we're working with our high school computer science teachers to bring some events and activities to the different buildings. Our students at BRS are going to be engaging in some AI literacy lessons, really fun activities. 3rd graders are going to be doing some 3D printing with our middle school folks. Up here at the high school, we're going to have some stations where kids can rip apart old computers and all sorts of hackathons and different events to try and draw attention to computer science as not only an elective in the high school, but as a potential career path. So we're excited about that. And then finally, last piece is the newest iteration of our technology committee. We launched that this year. We rebranded it as the Digital Learning Collective. And we've had a great group of administrators, teachers, parents, and students. We have about 15 come together for the first 2 sessions. We had wonderful conversations, did a bunch of activities, and we've identified these 3 major areas as the focuses for our work for the remainder of the year: digital wellness, digital skills, and then emerging technologies. And so we will be working to develop goals along with action steps that will become the basis for our New York State Technology Plan, which is due to New York State at the end of this school year. And then we will hopefully implement some of those action steps, or all of those action steps, in the coming school year, so that we can begin to kind of coalesce around a vision for teaching and learning with technology. So we're very excited. We have a few more sessions coming up, and of course we'll share out some of the results and the findings and the decisions of that committee later in the spring. And so that is all I have to share. I'm happy to answer any questions, thoughts.